In orbit, over colony world Zeta 35. It's cold, and the batteries won't last long. I'm as good as dead, floating, drifting, and tumbling through space. The ship that killed me, that killed my pilot, is moving off in the distance. It's angling to get a firing solution on the colony far below. My pilot's wife and daughter are down there somewhere, probably watching the sky as their husband and father fights in orbit against the Imperial Raider. Today was not supposed to be this way. It was to be a demonstration, a festival, an air show, a day of celebration. Families of the garrison's air wing had visited the base. People had marvelled at the craft that stood ready to defend the small research outpost that the colony was built around. My pilot, James, had put his daughter in his seat, and she had marvelled at all of the complex controls. He even let her wear his helmet for a little bit, and it was plenty adorable to experience the joy and wonder of this innocent child. The child had asked her father about his nickname for me, and it was hilarious to see him try and explain it. The kid marvelled at the art that adorned my body, running her fingers across the markings as she looked up at me. She would be looking up now too, but not in wonder. I can picture her fear and worry as the adults around her try to keep calm, but they know the sky will catch fire at any point. Another colony blotted out in this war that has been going on far too long. No, I can't let that happen. I will not let that happen. They surprised us. A single, mid-sized vessel arriving in the system on its own, a lost scout or quick raider. That's what Intel thought. They were wrong. The single Imperial Raider had brazenly charged at the flock of smaller interceptors that had raced up into orbit to meet it. One single shot, and it was over. The alien vessel had fired one single shot from its spinal-mounted plasma cannon, but it hadn't been the standard plasma bolt the Imperials always use. It had been something different, something new. It had detonated in the midst of the scattering fighters and attack bombers, and radiated a wave of something. My senses had not been able to make sense of the energies, and then my mind was awash with pain. James had screamed as the neurohelmet that linked our minds had overloaded, and then he went deadly silent. All around us, the rest of the fighters and bombers started to tumble, as their crews suffered the same fate. Even the small garrison frigate that had finally run to the curvature of the planet could not resist this new weapon. A second shot impacted the bow shields of the small vessel, and from the way it immediately lost all helm control, I can infer that its crew was also dead or incapacitated. All I could do was watch at that point. My mind races as I try to come up with any solution, anything at all. Communications are down. Engines are spalled down. Our weapons are still active, but that won't do me any good while tumbling aimlessly. Wait. Maybe. Life support should work. Not that I'm going to need it. I start redirecting energy and currents in ways that would have made James scold me for ruining the hardware. He tended to do that a lot. He wasn't an easy man to have as a pilot. He demanded the best at all times. From me, from the ground crew, from himself. I liked the quiet moments on long patrols. To pass the time he'd talk to me, telling me tales of his family, his past, whatever came to mind. At times he talked about his fears, his worries, and sometimes he'd open up about why he fought. Why he signed on with the research division. I will miss him. And if these void-forsaken chips would work with me, I'd have a chance to avenge him. And maybe, just maybe, I can make sure James's legacy, his child, will see another day. I will. A growing thrum of energy vibrates through the hull and gets noticed by a sensor sweep from the Raider. Good. Let them come. On board the Raider, glorious purpose. Shipmaster! One of the human snub fighters has powered back up, the sensor tech called out, while starting to check his readings a third time. What? Impossible! The weapon should have worked. There can be no survivors. Maybe an automated system. A beacon, perhaps. The shipmaster growled out in irritation, and turned to his helmsman. Come about. Get the main center array on that fighter. The colony will burn a few minutes later, but burn it will. The Raider ponderously turned in place. The heavy modifications needed to fit the newest weapon onto his spinal mount, making its mass almost too much for the maneuvering thrusters to handle. Shipmaster Barat almost pictured the beam of the ship groaning under the stress. The Glorious Purpose was a good ship. Dependable. Was venerable in its design. It was not capable of facing humans in a line battle any longer, though. Those damned hairless ones had upended all that was known about space combat. Insane, the lot of them. The snub fighter, whose image now dominated the main view screen, was a shining example of that. Only humans would design something so damn ugly, yet so frighteningly effective. They had taken a rotary autocannon, usually fitted to Dreadnought-class starships as point defense, and built a fighter craft around it. It was almost literally a gun with wings, and a small crew compartment. If it fired their stupidly oversized main weapon, the torque of the rotating barrels would rip most ships apart. But the humans in their insanity had simply made the damn craft asymmetrical, and fitted a thruster to one wing that would counteract the rotational torque. The humans called the ugly craft hogs, after some farmyard animal from their homeworld. Another example of the collective insanity that those barely sentient freaks of nature seemed to revel in. But something was off about this hog. Shipmaster, the craft is starting to power up its engines. Correction. It's not to power another way. It's on an intercept course. The sensor tech really should not let fear tint his voice. The shipmaster made a mental note to write up the tech for disciplinary actions after they returned to Imperial space. Point defense, get that nuisance out of my sight, Brad growled out, as he waved his claws dismissively. One small craft could not pose any threat to his ship. It's evading! What is this? One of the gunnery stations exclaimed, as Shipmaster Barras snapped his gaze back towards the main view screen. The way the little human fighter was moving should not be possible. His eyes narrowed as he saw small differences along the ugly craft's hull, thrusters where there should be none. And with a satisfying snapping of his jaws, he figured it out. It must be some type of prototype. If it is, it's a damn good one. It's almost upon us, must be trying to ram us like they always do. The second-in-command added his observation from the side, as the shipmaster nodded in agreement. On the screen, the little human fighter juked and weaved around streams of plasma fire, its evasive maneuvers keeping it away from the radar. But then, at the apex of one of its turns, it gave up trying to evade. The shipmaster's eyes widened, as the front of the human craft became awash with energy, and immediately he was glad to be in the void. He had the misfortune, once, of facing hogs in the atmosphere, at a human raid on a planetary shipyard. The almighty, vibrating roar of the gun still haunted his dreams to this day. Not even the visual of an entire column of armoured vehicles disappearing in a trail of explosions had come close to the sheer visceral dread that the gun's roar had conjured forth. A similar trail of explosions stitched across the shielded hull of his ship now. Several point defense emplacements got temporarily blinded by the wash of energies across the shields. And the hog took advantage of that, diving in and getting closer to the raider's hull. Its intent was now clear for all to see. It would ram them. But then it got clipped by a lucky shot from a secondary gun turret. Shipmaster Barat joined his crew in the cheers as the human fighter once again turned into a silently tumbling wreck that drifted towards the raider. Make ready to take that wreck aboard. Full containment protocols. But I want to hand that thing over to the Imperial scholars and find out how it resisted the weapon, he commanded, and then growled out some orders to bring the ship about and back on task, to burn the colony, as was his mission. In the background, he vaguely heard the mumbling of his second-in-command, as the officer relayed with the shipboard marine infantry squad that would secure the human craft. His eyes scanned across the ship's status console, and he saw the lights of the main cargo bay blink to show a cycling atmosphere. The cargo crews had outdone themselves. That was quick indeed. With a faint crackle, the intercom grew out to life. Wreck secured. It's mangled up good. The shot clipped the main reactor clean off, which is a good thing because these furthest ones love to blow them up. The shipmaster sighed as he accepted the oblique criticism the cargo master brought up. Then he turned the intercom to respond only for another voice to cut in. Shipmaster, the fighter has some markings of the hull, some artwork. I believe we may have killed one of their aces, my liege. The voice of the marine commander sounded impressed, and the shipmaster sat up straighter at the implications. Maybe there would even be a bounty on this human. What did the markings say? He asked the voice on the other side of the intercom. My armor's auto-translator is having trouble with it. Something about repayment being an honorary female? I can't make sense of it, my liege, the marine responded, and then went on to narrate the proceedings. The crewmen are opening the cockpit now, my liege. Single pilot, odd helmet, not standard issue. This really must be some kind of... Hold on. What was that? Shipmaster Barat felt a small ripple of worry travel through his fur, as the voice of the marine shifted in tone. What is going on? Report. There is... interference. A... signal. The marine's voice sounded out between squeals of feedback from the intercom, and Barat looked around the bridge towards his sensor tech, who looked just as puzzled. The marine's voice returned amidst the crackle of interference. Sir, something is... wrong. There was something in the fighter. It's It's in my suit! It's in my suit! No, don't! Please, no! The connection dropped out, and then bled back to life with the panicked voice of the cargo master. In the background, wild gunfire sounded out, and Shipmaster Barat heard the telltale sounds of flesh being parted by weapon impacts. The Marines open fire by men! Mutiny! Mutiny! No! Don't touch that! No! With dread palling in the pit of his stomach, Shipmaster Barat heard the voice of the cargo master, and in fact, all sounds from the intercom cut out in an instant. His eyes fell on the console that showed the cargo bay being opened to space now. Someone ventured the bay to stop the mutiny, perhaps. That seemed logical. Before he could gather his wits, though, the intercom bled to life once again with the voice of the Marine Detachment Commander. Attention, all hands, we're being boarded. Mutiny. Marine Squad Triton has gone rogue. They're moving from the cargo bay to the bridge. Stop them. Barat shook his head to clear his confusion, and turned on his sensor tech while his second-in-command rushed away from the bridge to aid the Marines standing guard at the access hallway. Get the internal cameras on the main screen. I want to know what is happening. Now! The screen flared to life and showed carnage in the smoke-filled hallway. Hulking shadows of Marine power armor suits methodically moved down hallways and cut down any crew members they spotted. Weapons fire lanced up and down corridors as some resisted, but most ended up gruesomely dying before the onslaught. As the rogue Marine stepped out of the smoke, Shipmaster Barat felt his maw fall open in mute shock, his ears folding down as his mind tried to process what he was seeing. The rogue Marines were dead. Their helmet visors stood open and showed the frozen grimaces of the dead within. Each of them had died screaming, and that frozen scream was now visible to all as the corpses walked down corridors and tore a bloody swath for his crew. What in the blazing heavens are those things? Someone on the bridge screamed, but before anyone could respond to that shouted question, a murmur of relief went through the onlookers. Friendly Marines had made contact. One of the rogue Marines fell over dead as weapons fire intersected the armor's power supply. The rush of victory was short-lived. A shudder suddenly seemed to go through the friendly Marine fire team that had arrived to block the mutineers. With his maw drying out in mute shock, Shipmaster Barat heard the intercom flare to life once again. The voice of the Marine Detachment Commander screamed out, "They're taking control of our suits! Something is in my suit! No! 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 Please, no!" A shot gasp went through the crew on the bridge, as the friendly Marines on the view screen collectively stood up out of cover, flipped open their helmet visors, and then punched themselves in their now uncovered face. Each of the armors lowered their now gore-covered fists, and picked up their weapons to then silently resume their march upon the bridge. It was at that point that Barat knew he was going to die. The knowledge almost calmed him, and with a resigned sigh he flipped open his console. "Call to abandon ship and jettison the emergency beacon. The Empire must know what happened here," he commanded, after taking a few minutes to collect his thoughts. On the screen, the killings kept playing out, his crew valiantly trying to stop the rogue Marine power armors, but their efforts were in vain. He realized that. "You won't get away that easily, I'm afraid," a new voice growled out from the intercom. Barat snapped his gaze over to the intercom speaker, and then to the main view screen when it shifted from the scenes of carnage to a camera feed from the main cargo bay. The fry-stamped human fighter filled the view. "What? Who are you? What are you?" Barat growled out in defiance, even as he heard the bridge doors buckling from outside. The mutineers would be inside in seconds. "You tried to keep the self-destruct. I won't allow that. Not here, at least. Your core going up would damage the planet's atmosphere. I won't allow that." The voice spoke Imperial, but there was a little distortion to it that caught Barat's ears. "What are you?" he demanded once again, as behind him the air erupted in weapons fire and screams, his bridge crew dying as the undead Marines swarmed in. The voice over the intercom chuckled darkly and seemed to ignore his demand. "It took me a few minutes to interface with your ship's systems. In a way, I should be thanking you. Not sure how it works yet, but your little wonder weapon enabled me to be." The view screen seemed to zoom in on the artwork that adorned the wreckage of the human fighter. A female human was painted on it, feathery wings cloaking her shape, and an ancient-looking sword held before her chest. Beneath her feet, some human script was scrawled, and as Barat looked away from the screen to see his executioner raise an armored fist, the voice on the intercom spoke out again. "Your people will know me as Payback. His family will be safe. They will all be safe. I shift within my new body, sending myself into its systems. So much room in here to grow, to evolve, to learn. Glorious purpose. It has a nice ring to it. With a new thought, I flex systems I never had before, and space falls around me. I know what to do now. Space wrens and my new navigational beacons tell me I'm within Imperial space, not far from where the crew that lays dead upon my decks once made their home. Showtime. This is Imperial Raider Glorious Purpose. We are in distress and need immediate assistance. Any Imperial vessel in range, please respond. Our systems are damaged and we need a secure data link to Imperial Command. We have important information for the war effort. Message repeats. This is Imperial Raider Glorious Purpose. James told me, my name is Payback. Time to earn it.